why did Jesus come to earth? Let's get into that. And that starts it for everything else.
You know, that really is the framing question for all of life, including our work amongst the poor. And, it's so fundamental and so obvious. And yet, my experience has been that when I ask Christians that basic question, why did Jesus come to earth? They don't give the answer that Jesus gave at the start of his earthly ministry. American Christians in particular, if I ask them, why did Jesus come to earth? They'll say, Jesus came to earth to die on the cross, to pay the penalty for my sins, so my soul can go to heaven someday when I die. And I believe that's true. I believe that that is true. I don't doubt that for 1 second. There's variations on that theme. Some will say that he came to save the lost. If you're a Calvinist, you'll say he came for the elect. But nobody ever says what Jesus says at the start of his earthly ministry. Luke chapter 4, Jesus says in verse 43, I've come to preach the good news of the kingdom of God. That's why I was sent. And so we don't have to pit these various facets of his coming against one another. They're all part of the story, the large story. And the large story is the coming of his kingdom, the fact that he's ushering in a new heavens and new earth. He's making all things new. That's the story. And that frames all of every aspect of our lives, and it frames how we work with people who are poor.
Now, because the kingdom of God, I mean, it is breaking through. It's the already, the not yet. And we're trying to talk about where sin has entered in and broken these different relationships. You break this down in the book of these different reconciliations that happen. Can you describe that for us right now?
Sure. So the next chapter in When Helping Hurts asks the question, what is poverty? If you ask most Americans what is poverty, they'll answer it like this. Poverty is about a lack of food, a lack of clothing, a lack of shelter. Poverty is a lack of some material thing. And there's a reason that that's our answer. It's because Western civilization is highly materialistic. We tend to look at life through material eyes. What's interesting is if you ask poor people, both in the United States and around the world, that same question, what is poverty? They will answer it differently. They'll say things like, I feel shame. I feel less than human. I feel like I'm not really part of the team. I feel like people look down on me. They tend to define their poverty in far more psychological and sociological terms than we do. And that disconnect between how we define it and how they're experiencing it is why so often our poverty alleviation efforts don't work. And what the poor are doing is they're actually expressing what I think is a more biblical anthropology than we are. The poor are bumping up against truth. They're bumping up against reality. And the reality is that we are not just material creatures. I believe the Bible teaches that we're highly integrated body, soul, relational thingies. And in that that relational dimension is something that we tend to overlook in both Western civilization and the Western church. Once you start to realize that we're actually hardwired for relationships with God, with ourselves, with others, and with creation, it reframes everything about what is human flourishing and how do we get to human flourishing for those who are materially poor and for ourselves. And that's what our book is trying to get at.